Welcome to As the Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. Today we welcome States of Nature frontman Eric Urbach to the podcast. States of Nature will release Brighter Than Before this Friday on Sell the Heart Records. Eric talks about learning to play guitar to join the band that would become Static Thought, signing with Hellcat Records, capitalizing on creativity, enjoying being alive, and more. Brighter Than Before is an absolutely incredible record, and I hope everyone who listens to this gives it a spin on Friday. Thanks for checking out this episode of As the Story Grows. If you are already subscribed, make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing on your podcast platform of choice. And if you like this episode, share it with someone else who would dig it. The world needs more people sharing new music. You can find links to the mailing list, Patreon page, and Discord server in the show notes or at asthestorygrows.com. Come hang out. Enjoy today's conversation with Eric from States of Nature. Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for hanging out so early.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, I feel like there's two types of bands. It's like, you know, the young 20-some bands who are trying to make it and touring hard and are always available. And then there's just like older people who are just like, I just like making music and I can't fucking quit, right?
For sure.
Yeah. And so, yeah, talking at 9 a.m. is probably like, I just can't quit doing this thing.
Yeah, you know, I'm like, I work as a recording engineer, so
okay.
my time is pretty flexible, just in general.
Yeah.
So it works out okay for me.
That's awesome. What got you into recording?
Well, my dad was always interested in recording, more just as like a hobby. Like he kind of just always had a little setup at the house. Yeah. And so when I was younger, I was always interested in it. But then as like kind of time went on, you know, like we had a demo to make, or my old band, or we just used it like a boombox and recorded that way, or, you know, tried a few different other things. And it always became fascinating to me. But I think about maybe 10 or 12 years ago, I actually started taking it more seriously, and started recording a bunch of bands locally. And then obviously like all of the States of Nature stuff, and then a few other things that I did, just with folks around the Bay Area.
Yes.
And then now I kind of work as an assistant for Jack Shirley at the Atomic Garden.
Oh, nice.
And then do, you know, just that's a more recent development, which has been great. So, but I have my own space too that I work out of.
That's awesome.
Where I'm sitting today.
That's rad. Yeah, my like technical degree is in recording engineering.
Nice.
And I was like, I did a lot for a while, and then like I had kids and I like stayed home with them, and then like the podcast, and I was just looking, and I'm like, all my mic stands are in the attic. I have a box of microphones, and I was like, there's probably a lot of money just sitting here that I'm not using that I should probably like sell.
I'm in acquisition mode, so let me know if you got something.
Man. That's great. Are you a lifelong West Coaster?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Richmond, California, which is about 15 minutes north of Oakland, about like 25 minutes from San Francisco.
Nice. Rad. What was growing up like?
It was good. I mean, I had two parents. I'm an only child. My parents both worked full time. I went to school in Richmond at a school called Pacific Academy, which is a kind of smaller, it was a private school, but it was a very kind of diverse private school. Most of my friends growing up were Asian or from Asian descent, and most of them were first generation kids, like the first kids born in the United States from there. Oh. And so I was one of the, I think, my parents weren't immigrants, but there was a lot of those kind of kids there who were at that school. So had a very, I would say, a very different experience from other people that I knew growing up, just because of the kind of culture I was around and immersed in and the food I was eating. at my friends' houses. It wasn't like, so it was just a little different, but it was cool. I mean, I really, it's good. And then music was kind of always around. My dad's a musician and a drummer. So music has always been kind of a very important part of my life, as well as art. Just my mom's a visual artist as well. So it was there was a very creative upbringing and encouragement to be creative.
That's awesome. At what point did music become a thing that like you took on personally as like, I don't know, like your like passion, I guess?
Sure. I think when I was 11 years old, I was in 6th grade at the time. Maybe I was 11 or 12. I can't remember exactly. But I'd always played music with my dad, and my cousin also played music, and that would be, and their friends, excuse me. And that would sort of be the introduction to that. And it was always something my family did. But then when I was younger, around this age, after school one day, 2 friends of mine, or actually, no, I shouldn't say that. They would become friends. 2 people I didn't know were jamming in the band room, like, which was kind of in the middle of the school. And so as everyone's exiting class, they were just like jamming, and it was like loud, and it was like drums and bass, and it was like, it was kind of punkish, let's say. I didn't know what that was really at the time. I was like, I've never seen 2 people my age or close to my age like playing music together. It was like it was a really transformative experience for me, because then it became the only thing I cared about after that, from that day on. So I was like, after school every day I was hanging out there with them, and they were really bothered by it and really annoyed. And they were like, at some point they were just kind of like, hey, listen, like, we need a guitar player, and if you can go learn how to play guitar, like, you can be in the band with us. And they just kind of said that to get rid of me, but I took it very seriously, and I went home and I was like, Dad, there's these kids, and like, they want to play music with me. Isn't that cool? Like, I need to learn the guitar though. Like, can you show me something? And he's like, sure. And then he showed me like, I don't know, like A, G, B, like chords and power chords and stuff like that. And like maybe 2 weeks later, I came back and I was like, I know how to play guitar. Let's do it. And, then that became my first band that was called Static Thought. And
nice.
Eventually, after high school, we got signed to Hellcat Records and went from there.
Showed up on the scene, backstep like it was a dream. Something that don't understand. 10,000 dead, but not caused by man. Dreams and homes, gone by blood. More people dying cause of innocent blood. Showing right next to a right man. This is something I don't understand. There's a fire in the sky tonight. Nobody coming, nowhere to decide. Poor men to suffer, we still linger on. Working class men, now they're all gone. Now they're all gone. They're fucking gone.
What was the scene like there? I mean, you're in a small town, but I mean, you're close to Oakland and San Francisco. Is it like a good scene?
Oh, great. Yeah. I mean, so luckily enough for me, like the closest kind of all ages venue to my house was 94 Gilman Street, which is like a pretty, historic DIY space, where like, a few generations before me were Rancid and Green Day and Bad Religion and NoFX, and kind of before they all got big, that's where they would play. And like Operation Ivy was probably one of the first large bands from there at that time. But anyway, so that venue has like some historic, within the music world, like it's a historic place. So it was like, 10, 15 minutes from my house. So that's where, when I first started going to shows, that's where I went. And I was immediately, there's always like one place, I think, in any town or any community that sort of like injects you into the underground. And for us here, it was that place. So at the time, this was maybe like, 2002, 2003, maybe 2004, right around then. The music that was happening was a lot of like kind of like D-beat crust, kind of metal influenced hardcore, and a lot of just like very aggressive punk, I would say, just like and punk adjacent. And for me, as like a 12-year-old kid, 13-year-old kid, I was like it was very jarring to see this kind of happening in front of me, and I had and it was definitely like a very eye-opening, and it was very intense. The thing I vividly remember is how intense the music was, and how like vicious it was, and how intense the people seemed. And that was very much the introduction to like underground music, was like through Gilman. And I think at the same time there was like kind of like a street punk, like a la like spiky punk, we'll call it spiky punk kind of thing happening. It was starting to happen and kind of get relatively, known. So these are like bands like from the East Coast, more specifically like the Casualties and the Unseen and like a Global Threat and bands like that. And there was a few bands like here that sounded like that. And that was sort of where I found like I will say a community, if you will, was like in this kind of initial scene.
Yeah, that's what you were drawn towards more than the heavier, crazy stuff.
I don't know why, but I think it was more so that like the band, I think I found my bandmates gave me those records, and then I was like, oh, I really like this. And then there was bands like that here locally playing that kind of music, and that sort of, those were the shows that my friends went to, and so I tagged along with them there, and then that became the scene that I became into. But also like, I also really liked the music because it was also a little more melodic and a little catchier. And I think that at the time I was listening to like Blink-182 and Green Day were like kind of and Rancid were kind of my favorite bands. And so I think because it was a little more melodic, I became more interested in it than the other stuff. But, I found interest in the other stuff eventually, but it was sort of, I think I was scared at first, and this was sort of like more of a step into an easier step in, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember going. It was supposed to be a punk band that was playing, like a pop punk band. They canceled, and it was like a band like Converge showed up.
Oh yeah,
and it was just like, what is? I was probably 12 or 13. And it was like, holy shit, what am I watching right now?
Yeah,
and that was it. What led you guys to Hellcat Records?
So when I was in high school, I went to a school that was about, I don't know, it was like maybe 2 or 3 blocks off of Telegraph Avenue, near the UC Berkeley campus. And, Hellcat was always like a label that I was interested in as just like a entity. I liked every band on that label. Like Rancid was my favorite band, but then like, I liked F-, I liked the Nerve Agents. I liked the Distillers. I liked like that kind of punk of that time. And those I didn't really like the psychobilly stuff that much, but like that they were doing. But pretty much any of the punk and ska and reggae that they were releasing. Leftover Crack was a big band for me. Choking Victim, like that stuff. So I was like very into the aesthetic and the music, and I liked that there was kind of a diverse label, like it just had multiple genres on it. And then I met Tim one day just by chance. I was going to lunch with my friend, and he was on the street, and I saw him, and I was like, oh, that's Tim Armstrong from Rancid. And then my friend was like, oh, let's go talk to him. And I was like, no, we're not doing that. and then he ran over to him immediately. I just had no choice but to follow. And so I met him, and we talked, and he'd already heard of my band, and
nice.
Which was kind of crazy. And then, I just kept seeing him. Over and over and over again on the street. Like, and he would call me over, we would talk. And then at some point he like invited me into his place to like listen to music. And then like I showed him some of my stuff, and he, I think he just kind of like, I don't know, I think he just liked me and thought like, I think he was, being from the Bay Area, like we grew up, 5 minutes from each other, essentially, like, in different times, but like he lived very close to where I grew up. And so I think he kind of thought like, oh, this is like the next generation of like Gilman kids, blah, blah, blah. And so I think he was like kind of interested in us from that perspective. And then also just like the music, and was very complimentary to like what we were doing. And so he asked me like at some point, like, hey, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to be on Hellcat. And he was like, okay. And then that was that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. What led to that band disbanding then? Just like kind of the crash of the wave, or just like...
Yeah, I think that, so Static Thought was like I said, like started when I was like 12, essentially. And the band kind of, we got signed, we did a lot of touring. We put out 2 records with them, and then we did one after that on our own. Mm-hmm. And we went to Europe a bunch of times. Like we played the Reading and Leeds Festival. We got to tour the US a few times, tour Canada a few times, toured Mexico. And we just did that for, pretty much from when I was out of high school till I was like 21. So I think by, that from 12 to 21, that's a huge, that's your adolescence essentially. And and I think that by the time I was 21, a bunch of members had kind of come and went because they were kind of wanted to go to school or wanted to do this other stuff and weren't really interested in the band anymore. And I had changed a lot and was interested in other music, and I didn't, and the band had changed a lot. And, as natural as, as we're going through this kind of crazy growth time. And I think, we just kind of, I think if I remember correctly, we had a really good group of people in the band. And I kind of thought personally that if the band was going to work, it was going to work with these people. And if it wasn't, then it wasn't. So I think one of them decided that they wanted to quit. And so then I said, yeah, that's it. Let's just stop. Because at this point it's kind of too much. So let's do that. Time to do something else.
Yeah. Was there a line there's a few years gap between the new band and A Static Thought? Were you doing music in between there trying to make things work, or was it just focusing on your career?
I think it was a little bit of all of that. I definitely wanted to try to do something different musically. I wanted to do something more rock influenced, or a rock band, or I don't know, something that wasn't I was just kind of sick of at the time I was just kind of sick of doing something that was so, in punk. I guess I wanted to just do something else. I wanted to challenge myself to try and write other kinds of music.
Yeah.
And just actually start a band fresh with a vision and a musical direction. So I think at the time, I'm trying to remember this correctly, I think I had done a few kind of fill-in gigs for some friends, playing drums on some tours. I was working at the time for Pirates Press, which is a record manufacturing company. I think around this time also I moved to San Francisco, and kind of, I was oh, now I'm living in the city, and what's this about? And so kind of exploring that. So there's a lot of change happening all at the same time. And I did a band called No Secrets. That was kind of a rock band. And I'm trying to remember if I was doing anything else really then. I don't think I actually joined another band. I think that was, oh yeah, duh. I also played drums in this band called Everybody Row, which was with Jack Shirley and Steven Shirley from Comadre, and then our friend Jasmine, who was in a bunch of hardcore bands, probably most notably Torso, and she plays in Ceremony now too, and a few other bands. But we did a thing which was sort of a soul influenced punk band, which was really fun. We weren't a band for too long, but it was an amazing project. I think I feel very fondly about the music. I think it's still pretty good. So I did those two bands at that time, and then played, and I was one band I was playing guitar and another band I was playing drums in, and then kind of filled in for friends as drummers. And it was kind of a weird, it was a weird time. I think musically I was going through kind of a metamorphosis about what I wanted to do. And then I think a little bit later, maybe those two bands kind of ended, and I think they were both great because it kind of got me out of where I was and kind of were good transitions into what I wanted to do next, which was States of Nature. And then that band kind of formed out of just, finding a guitar that sounded cool. States of Nature I started it with a friend of mine, and the initial vision of it was I was going to play guitar and this other person was going to sing, and they were really into literature and writing, and I was you can just handle writing the words and I can just handle writing the music, and we can kind of collaborate a little bit, but we'll sort of be separate. And I think the first song that I wrote for the band, he sang on, and the first line of the song was States of Nature. And I thought that was I was oh, that's a kind of a cool turn of phrase. And I was we should name the band that. And then he thought it was cool too. So then that became the name of the band.
Nice. Yeah. Nice. Talk to me about starting this band And then, COVID happens and you get a few EPs out there, and then like the world shuts down.
Sure.
Like, aside from just like everybody is fucked in this moment and like the music industry is screwed, I feel people are tired of, but it's like an interesting moment with like when you're trying to start something and then you can't do anything with it, like where you just like, okay, maybe that's the end of playing music and this band.
I never thought that necessarily, because for me at least, like music has always been a constant in my life. So I think regardless of like what's going on, like music will always be there. It's always sort of been there as a thing that I can rely on when I'm like feeling down or not in a great place. So I think leading up to COVID, I think the band had some pretty good momentum. Like I think we were sounding really good. We had done two EPs at that time. We were about to like go tour Mexico, and I think like there was like a good energy and a good vibe around it. And I definitely think COVID kind of like, obviously it puts everything on hold and everything gets canceled and we have to like, do this other thing now. But I think at that time I was feeling everything felt very uncertain. So I think like, I wasn't really feeling creative. I was just sort of more like, something's happening in the world that like we got to pay attention to and be present for, and like other things are taking priority right now. And I think that's fine. I think music can take a back seat. I think there's some times when it's maybe not, music's not necessarily needed. Like we need to kind of like, it's not everything. It's just a thing that's cool, but and important, but also like not everything. So I think that, so that was going on, and I think we decided like we were going to try to maybe record the songs we were working on once like we felt comfortable doing that, or we had like a plan. The good thing is like in my room, like I have I have a main live room, but then I also have a booth that I had, which is right here, right behind me.
Yeah.
And at the time I had the controls in there, so we could be separate as well. Like I could just close the door and like run some fans, and like we could be separate, and that would be all right. And everyone can wear masks and whatnot. So, and we just did it like one at a time, I think, to record. Like we did one person came over and I just played guitar and they played drums. And then we did the bass, and then we did the other guitar, but we could all be separate. We could all wear masks, and we could all test beforehand. So we're able to sort of figure out how to do it. But I think the thing I recall really like kind of putting everything on hold was like during the George Floyd uprising when that was going on. I think everybody kind of felt that I knew that like, whatever else is going on in our lives, like that can just sort of be secondary to like this moment that we're having right now, this sort of important political moment where like everybody needs to show up and be present for this. So I think at that point, like, whatever, music passion at the time, I was like, that can wait. We don't, and like, I wasn't even thinking about it. Like we were just thinking about this. And I think coming out, then I think like once sort of that, I mean, this hasn't really been a resolution even still to that necessarily, but I think once that sort of became like less like in the moment, and I think like, Donald Trump losing the election, and then the COVID vaccine coming out, and like kind of all of this stuff, I think there was like a feeling of like, oh, things are going to change for the better. Like that. Right at that moment, I think I started playing guitar, and like all of a sudden, like all these songs just came. It was just sort of like a burst of creative energy out of nowhere. And I kind of felt like more, I don't know if like inspired was the word, but I just had a very incredible songwriting flow that I hadn't experienced maybe since, maybe like 12 or 13 years. It just like all of a sudden all this stuff just started coming out. And I think it was probably just that all that time and all the stuff that had happened, and I had like kind of built up, and then the kind of musical moment happened out of that, which was interesting.
Yeah. Was that just, does that influence the sound of this record? Was there like, I don't know, is it just all that creative energy having you write slightly different, or were you purposely trying to go in a different direction? Because this feels a little different than the EPs, and like this band, I mean, obviously compared to your other bands, definitely to me has that East Coast vibe to it more than Static Thought, right? Like,
oh, for sure. Most definitely. Yeah. I think the impetus of the band sonically had a very specific kind of a few very specific like points. One, like I would say three main ones. One was definitely like 90s era Discord Records. One was definitely like Pacific Northwest, kind of like 90s, but also like more modern, because there's a lot of cool, really, the Seattle area always has amazing music. And there's a lot of bands kind of like that were kind of combining punk and psych rock and things like that I really like, that are up there now. And then just more the broader, I would say, punk influenced indie rock thing. Like I would say like Idols would be one, or like Fontaines DC, or like Courtney and Barnett, or like bands like that have kind of this influence of that kind of in them. So I'd say like those kind of touch points were definitely kind of the impetus for getting this going. And I think that like definitely as we moved into this new record, I don't know if I consciously wanted it to be different. I just wanted it to be better. Like I just wanted to have better songs. And that's usually my goal, is just to like write better songs that still work for the band, but like that are a step, in a better direction. Like I think as you settle into sort of what you're trying to do, inevitably, like, you're going to, you're it's like flexing a muscle. It's like, doing reps. Eventually it's going to kind of get easier, get a little bit better. You kind of know, you learn stuff as you write. But I always kind of trust the process, even when I'm like feeling like, oh, nothing's coming. I just trust myself to know that like at some point the thing will come, and I just have to be patient and wait for it. And it always does. And so with this, I think the thing that really happened was, I think the first song I wrote for this record was, usually there's one that kind of sparks the whole thing. I think it was the title track, Better Than Before. And I think once I wrote that one, I was like, oh shit, this is like like that was really good. And then all of a sudden it was just like the next one came, and the next one came, and the next one came, and the next one came. And then I realized, oh, these are coming and quickly, and I need to kind of like think about this as a record, because I think we're going to have enough for a record here. And so then I started just sort of trying to put the pieces together like a puzzle. Like, what does this need? And just kind of constantly asking myself, like, taking a more of a bird's eye approach. Like, what does the record need to feel complete, to sort of feel like a thing? What's the journey I'm taking here musically with this thing? And that sort of dictated where things went from there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. The album's called Brighter Than Before. Does that kind of encapsulate that feeling you were talking about of just like 2020, of just like the end of that year, like, okay, there's a brighter future than what we've just come out of?
I think that's definitely part of it. I don't want to make like a COVID record per se, but like, right. Definitely the feeling of hope, I think, was kind of the impetus for that. And that was sort of the central, I think, feeling that moves across the record, is it's sort of like hopeful and energetic and free. I think the thing that I always try to remember, I try to think about, which is we're alive today, and we have and because we're alive, we have an opportunity to grow, to be present in life, to like contribute to the world, to make things better. And I try to like sort of center that in my life, just in general. And I try to remember that we're alive, and a lot of people died, and are dying today, and are always like in the middle of some really terrible stuff, happening. And while I have the opportunity to be alive and to live where I do, I feel like I need to, do my best for the people around me and the people I don't know. And, music's just one way to like express that, I think, and bring joy to people. So like with this, I definitely wanted to make a fun record. I wanted people to remember that, like, we're alive. So like, let's, part of being alive means we can enjoy stuff. Like, it doesn't, like, we can still be present and like remember to be like things can be cool, and like let's enjoy being alive. And so like I think that was definitely part of it. But also I think the other side of it is like, I think through that experience we learned something about who we are as a people, who we are like living on Earth, and like what this means. And everyone kind of, I think, that I knew did a really deep self-evaluation of who they are and what they're doing with their lives, and like wanted to make a change. And I think like, whether it was like, within their relationships with like, a lot of people broke up, a lot of people who were married, like got divorced, like a lot of people quit their jobs and like responded to like wanted to work from home, wanted to have control over their time. And like there was this huge, I think, wave of people who were kind of like, you know, re-examining who they were and what they wanted from life. And I think that like that self-exploration and knowing more than we did before, like also kind of contributes to that title.
How'd you guys get connected with Sell the Heart to release this?
I've known Andy for a very long time. I can't remember exactly when we first met, but he's a dude who's always kind of been around and like has always been kind of, I think I maybe met him around when I was doing No Secrets, if I remember correctly. I think we played a show with the New Trust, and they're from Santa Rosa, which is where Andy's from, which is about an hour north from where I am. And so, but he's always been involved in music around, and then he did Sell the Heart. I remember kind of the first iteration of that. He was releasing some more like, I would say, indie specific bands that were, I was friends with too. I think Build Us Airplanes was the one that I think that now that I'm talking this out. Build Us Airplanes was this indie band from Vacaville that my friend Matt played drums in, and I think he introduced me to Andy, if I remember correctly. And that was probably in 2012, right around then. And but Andy and I don't live too far away from one another, and we've like kind of just always been around, running into each other, talking about music, share similar interests. And we did No Secrets did a track for a comp that he did around that time. And I think we just kind of kept in touch. And I think at some point when we were doing this band, he caught wind of it and he was like, wow, I really like this. And so then we talked about it. And at some point he was like, yeah, let's do something together. And it seemed cool. And yeah, it's been great. I mean, I love working with Andy. He's a really good dude and he's really easy to work with, and he gets where we're coming from, and, is happy to support, which is great.
Nice. Album's out February 16th. What's this year look like? Are you guys going to try to keep it local, play local shows? Are you going to try to trek out at all, or just like get the record out and see what happens?
The goal is definitely to do as much as possible in terms of touring for the next 6 months. Excuse me. So we were kind of in the I would say embryo stages of kind of putting it together, but our hopes are to come to the East Coast. Our hopes are to go to Mexico and kind of make up this tour that we had planned before, do some West Coast stuff, maybe try to attempt to go to Europe, if that's possible. So, or to the UK, we have there's a label in the UK called Little Rocket Records that is putting out this record. And then another label, Engineer Records, who put out our last one out there. And we, because they've like made effort to help us out, we want to come out there and kind of support them with that. So we're trying to work on that as well right now. So yeah, the goal is definitely to try to go, hard for the next 6 months, and just do it. The only thing I want to say about the record is that, like, I think this is the best music I've ever been a part of with a group of people. I feel very lucky to be in a band with like 3 other individuals who are all great musicians, wonderful to hang out with, and whose, musical creativity is inspiring. And I think we all inspire each other musically. And I think we have come together to make a record that I think all of us feel very proud of. And I think that you can really hear through the whole thing kind of the fun, the jovial nature of the thing, the kind of self-reflectiveness, this semi-seriousness. I think we've really put together something that is interesting and powerful and sort of unique. And I hope people, respond to that. But if not, that's cool too. We made something that we're proud of. And so,
yeah,
I can feel good that we made something that was like the best thing we could make. So, so Brighter Than Before, go check it out.
Thanks for listening to As the Story Grows. Our intro music was written and composed by Jeremy Hunt. The As the Story Grows theme is by Bob Nana. If you like what you hear, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and give us a rating and review. If you'd like to support the show financially, you can join us at patreon.com/asthestorygrows. Be a part of our community and join the ongoing conversation over on Discord. If you enjoy this episode, share it on social media with your friends. Much appreciated, and thanks for listening.